This message has found its way to you because your quantum field has been emitting a particular frequency signature, and reality, in response, has organized circumstances to guide you here, not randomly to this video, but to this specific transmission at this precise moment. Your consciousness has reached the exact vibrational state where what you're about to receive can be fully integrated, not just intellectually understood. Consider the series of events that have led you to this point right now. Perhaps it was a thought you had earlier today that prompted you to pick up your device. Maybe it was the video you watched before this one that somehow guided you here. Or perhaps it was a sense of restlessness, curiosity, or an inexplicable pull that made you click. It's also the very fact that you're reading these words in this exact moment, not 5 minutes ago or 5 minutes from now. This wasn't coincidence, it was all synchronicity. Your quantum field was organizing reality to bring you to information that your consciousness is prepared to receive. You've likely been noticing it more frequently lately, haven't you? How certain numbers keep appearing everywhere you look. How conversations seem to echo thoughts you just had. How people show up in your life precisely when you need them, bringing exactly what you need. How information arrives just when you're ready to grasp it. You may have been attributing these occurrences to coincidence, pattern recognition, or confirmation bias, which is what your rational mind tends to do. It creates logical explanations for quantum phenomena, things it doesn't have the frameworks to understand. But deep down, beneath the rational explanations, you sense that something more profound is at play. You can feel it, a sense that reality is far more responsive to your consciousness than you were led to believe. It's an awareness that you're not merely passively experiencing a predetermined reality, but actively participating in its creation through mechanisms you don't yet fully comprehend. A recognition that the universe isn't indifferent to you. It's constantly communicating with you through the language of synchronicity. The very appearance of this video in your reality right now is a synchronicity in itself. You didn't search for these exact words, and you didn't plan to watch this specific content. It found you through the invisible intelligence that orchestrates reality behind the scenes. The quantum field that responds to consciousness by arranging matter, energy, and circumstances into patterns that deliver what consciousness is seeking. Your seeking created a resonance field, and this message was drawn into your experience through that resonance. The ancient mystery schools understood this principle perfectly. They taught that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. This isn't because teachers are constantly searching for students, but because readiness generates a frequency that attracts matching frequencies. Your readiness created the conditions for this transmission to reach you. The fact that you're here reading these words, engaging with this content, proves that your consciousness has reached a threshold where synchronicity is no longer occasional but constant, no longer surprising but expected, no longer something that happens to you, but something you're actively generating through your elevated state of awareness. Right now, in this precise moment, you're experiencing what quantum physicists refer to as entanglement. Your consciousness is entangled with this message, with everyone else who has received it, and with the collective field of awakening that's unfolding across the entire planet. You're not separate from any of it. You're woven into a vast network of consciousness that's recognizing itself, remembering itself, and awakening to itself. This recognition, this remembering, this awakening, happens through synchronicity, through the universe organizing itself to deliver the right message to the right consciousness at the right time. You've been selected, but not by external forces choosing you randomly. You've been selected by your own quantum field, reaching the frequency where selection becomes recognition. You chose yourself through every choice that elevated your consciousness, every experience that expanded your awareness, and every moment you remained present when you wanted to escape. Now reality is confirming that selection by delivering you here to this message at this moment, when you're finally ready to understand what synchronicity truly is and how to work with it consciously rather than just observing it happen around you. You've been experiencing time differently lately, haven't you? Not in dramatic, obvious ways that would make you question your sanity, but in subtle ways that make you wonder if something fundamental has shifted in how you perceive reality. Perhaps you've experienced moments where an hour feels like 10 minutes or 10 minutes feels like an hour. Maybe there have been instances where you know what's about to happen seconds before it happens. Or perhaps you've thought about someone and they contact you immediately, so consistently that dismissing it as coincidence requires more mental contortion than simply accepting that something real is occurring. This isn't just your imagination creating patterns where none exist. This is your consciousness expanding beyond the linear time construct that most people operate within. You're beginning to perceive reality as it actually functions at quantum levels, not as a linear sequence of separate moments, but as a field of infinite possibilities where past, present, and future coexist. And your consciousness can access information from any point in that field when it reaches sufficient coherence. You've also been noticing that you can sense things about people and situations without any logical basis for knowing what you know. You meet someone new and immediately understand things about them that they haven't told you. You walk into a room and feel the energy of what happened there, even though you weren't present. You know when someone is lying, not by analyzing their words, but by directly perceiving the incongruence in their field. You sense outcomes before they manifest, feel shifts before they become visible, and understand patterns that haven't yet revealed themselves to ordinary perception. This isn't you becoming delusional or developing paranoia. This is your consciousness accessing information through non-local perception, the quantum capacity to know things without relying on the 5 physical senses. Every human possesses this capacity, but in most people, consciousness is so dominated by rational mind activity and environmental noise that the subtle signals of non-local perception get drowned out. Your consciousness has become quiet enough, clear enough, and coherent enough to receive signals that were always broadcasting, but that you couldn't previously detect. You're operating on a different frequency than most people around you now. You can feel it when you're in groups, can't you? That sense of being present, but somehow not fully engaged with the surface-level conversations and concerns that occupy most people's attention. This isn't because you think you're superior or more evolved, but because your consciousness is literally tuned to a different channel, perceiving layers of reality that remain invisible to those operating at denser frequencies. This frequency difference creates a strange paradox in your life. You're simultaneously more connected to the fundamental nature of reality and more disconnected from consensus reality. You are more aware of the quantum field underlying all physical manifestation and less interested in the material concerns that drive most human behavior, more attuned to universal consciousness and less resonant with tribal consciousness. It's isolating sometimes, this frequency gap between you and most of the people in your immediate environment. But here's what's actually happening. You're not losing connection with humanity. You're gaining connection with your true nature, which is consciousness itself, rather than the limited identity constructed by your personal history and social conditioning. As you connect more deeply with consciousness, you naturally experience reality in the ways that consciousness experiences reality, non-linearly, multidimensionally, and synchronistically. The experiences you've been having aren't signs that something is wrong with you. They're signs that something is right with you. They're signs that your consciousness is evolving beyond the limitations most people accept as absolute reality, remembering capacities that were always inherent in your being but were dormant while you operated at frequencies where those capacities couldn't activate. You've been experiencing moments of profound recognition lately too, times when you're watching, reading, or hearing something and you think, I already knew this, even though you're encountering it for the first time in physical reality. That recognition isn't false memory or wishful thinking. It's your consciousness accessing information from the quantum field, where all knowledge exists simultaneously, where nothing is hidden or unknown, and where understanding is immediate rather than gradually accumulated through sequential learning. These mystical experiences, the time distortions, the precognitive knowings, the energetic perceptions, the frequency shifts, the profound recognitions, they're not happening to you randomly. They're happening because your consciousness has reached a developmental stage where the veils between ordinary perception and quantum perception are thinning, where the boundaries between your individual awareness and universal awareness are becoming permeable, and where you're beginning to function as consciousness itself, rather than as a separate self, trying to understand consciousness from the outside. Every difficult experience in your life, every loss, every failure, every moment of suffering, every period of confusion, every relationship that ended, every plan that fell apart, was preparing your consciousness for this exact moment of recognition. This isn't because the universe is cruel and wants you to suffer before rewarding you, but because consciousness expansion requires the dissolution of limiting structures, and dissolution always feels like destruction from inside the experience. Consider how a seed must break open for the plant to emerge. The seed doesn't experience that breaking as growth. It experiences it as death, as the end of everything it knew itself to be. The hard, protective shell that kept it safe must crack and dissolve. The compact, contained form must expand beyond its boundaries. Everything the seed was must cease to exist for what it's becoming to emerge. If the seed could think, it would interpret this process as catastrophic failure rather than miraculous transformation. You've been breaking open. Every difficulty was a crack in the shell. Every loss was the dissolution of structures that protected the old you but would constrain the new you. Every ending was making space for beginnings that couldn't coexist with what ended. You've been interpreting these experiences as evidence that you're doing something wrong, that you're being punished, or that reality is against you. But you weren't being destroyed. You were being reorganized at quantum levels in preparation for operating at frequencies your old structures couldn't handle. The pressure you've experienced wasn't random suffering, it was precisely calibrated reorganization, like how a diamond forms from carbon under specific conditions of heat and pressure. Your consciousness required specific conditions to reorganize from its ordinary state into its quantum state. Too little pressure, and the transformation doesn't occur. Too much pressure, too quickly, and the system shatters. But the exact right amount of pressure applied over the exact right duration creates fundamental restructuring at the atomic level. Your life circumstances have been providing that pressure, not because you deserved punishment, but because you required transformation. Every challenge developed capacities you'll need for what comes next. Every obstacle taught you something essential that you couldn't have learned through comfort and ease. Every period of darkness revealed light you couldn't have perceived without contrast. The pressure wasn't trying to break you, it was trying to break you open, to crack the shell of limited identity so that expanded consciousness could emerge. This is the quantum understanding of spiritual metamorphosis that every wisdom tradition points toward through different metaphors. The Buddhist concept of ego death and rebirth, the Christian symbolism of crucifixion and resurrection, the alchemical process of nigredo, the blackening, the dissolution, the death phase that precedes albedo, the whitening, the purification, the rebirth into refined form, the shamanic dismemberment where the initiate is symbolically torn apart by spirits and reconstructed with new capacities. You are the caterpillar in the chrysalis right now. You've already dissolved into organic soup. The caterpillar you were no longer exists, but the butterfly you're becoming hasn't fully formed yet. You're in the in-between state, no longer what you were, but not yet fully what you're becoming. This in-between state is deeply uncomfortable because it's neither one thing nor the other. It's liquid potential waiting to crystallize into new form. Most people never complete this metamorphosis because they can't tolerate the in-between state. When the caterpillar starts dissolving, when their old identity begins falling apart, and when their familiar structures start collapsing, they panic. They try to reconstruct the caterpillar rather than allowing the butterfly to emerge. They cling to what's dissolving rather than surrendering to what's emerging. Clinging to what's dissolving while trying to prevent what's emerging creates the experience of being stuck, not moving forward into the new, but unable to return to the old. But you've stayed in the chrysalis. You've allowed the dissolution, even when it felt like destruction. You've surrendered to the process, even when you couldn't see where it was leading. You've trusted the transformation, even when every external indicator suggested you were falling apart, rather than coming together in a new configuration. That surrender, that trust, that willingness to remain in the uncomfortable unknown, that's what allows the quantum reorganization to complete. The difficult path you've walked wasn't a detour from your purpose. It was the direct route to your purpose. It was forging you into someone capable of expressing what you came here to express, contributing what you came here to contribute, and embodying what you came here to embody. Easy paths create comfortable people, but they don't create powerful people. Smooth journeys produce pleasant experiences, but they don't produce profound transformation. Your difficult path was creating in you the strength, wisdom, compassion, resilience, and understanding that your purpose requires. Something is building inside you right now. Can you feel it? Not physically, not emotionally, but energetically. A sense of pressure mounting, of potential accumulating, of something vast preparing to emerge through you into manifestation. It's been building for a while, actually, beneath your conscious awareness, growing stronger with each synchronicity you notice, each mystical experience you integrate, and each moment of recognition that reality is far more responsive to consciousness than you believed possible. This building energy isn't anxiety or stress, though it might feel similar at times. It's activation energy, the quantum potential that accumulates before a phase transition, the pressure that builds before a breakthrough, and the charge that increases before a lightning strike. In physics, there's a concept called critical mass, the minimum amount of something required for a chain reaction to become self-sustaining. You're approaching critical mass. The energy building in your field is reaching the threshold where transformation becomes inevitable rather than merely possible. You can feel it in the way synchronicities are accelerating in your life. What used to happen occasionally now happens constantly. What used to surprise you now confirms what you already knew. The universe isn't just whispering to you anymore, it's speaking clearly, directly, and consistently. Numbers are appearing everywhere with meanings that resonate deeper than logic can explain. Symbols are showing up across unrelated contexts, pointing you toward the same message. People are entering your life at perfect timing, bringing exactly what you need. Information is arriving precisely when you're ready to receive it through channels that seem orchestrated by invisible intelligence. This acceleration isn't random. It's the universe responding to your elevated frequency by increasing the bandwidth of communication. Like how a radio picks up more stations when you increase its sensitivity, your consciousness is detecting more signals as your coherence increases. The synchronicities were always happening, but you're finally tuned to the right frequency to perceive them clearly. The more you perceive them, the more you trust them. The more you trust them, the more you align with them. The more you align with them, the more they intensify. It's a feedback loop of increasing coherence between your consciousness and the quantum field. You're also noticing that manifestation is becoming almost effortless in certain areas of your life. Things you need appear without you forcing, controlling, or manipulating circumstances. Solutions emerge organically without you having to figure everything out through mental effort. Doors open at precisely the right time without you having to knock them down. This isn't luck finally finding you after years of difficulty, it's quantum alignment. Your field is broadcasting clear signals that reality responds to by organizing circumstances that match those signals. But here's what's really happening. Beneath the surface of these experiences, beneath the synchronicities and manifestations and mystical perceptions, you're undergoing a fundamental transformation in how you interface with reality. Most people relate to reality as something external that happens to them. They're passive observers of a predetermined world over which they have minimal influence. You're transitioning into a completely different relationship with reality. You are becoming a conscious co-creator who understands that observation isn't passive but creative, and that consciousness doesn't just perceive reality, but actively participates in constructing it. This transition from passive observer to conscious creator is what every spiritual teaching points toward, what every wisdom tradition tries to communicate, and what every enlightened being attempts to demonstrate. It's not about gaining power over reality through force of will. It's about recognizing that you were never separate from reality in the first place. You are reality becoming aware of itself, consciousness observing itself, and the quantum field knowing itself through your particular perspective. Feel this energy as we go deeper, because what I'm about to reveal will show you exactly what this building energy is preparing you for. It will explain why synchronicity aren't just interesting coincidence, but the fundamental mechanism through which consciousness organizes reality. It will demonstrate how you can work with synchronicity consciously, rather than just observing it happen around you. And it will clarify why this particular moment in your life is so significant, why everything has been building towards this recognition, why you found this message, or more accurately, why this message found you at this exact time. The energy building in your field right now isn't preparing you for something small or insignificant. It's preparing you for a quantum leap in consciousness, a fundamental shift in how you experience reality, and a complete transformation of your relationship with existence itself. The reason you can feel this building so intensely right now, in this moment, as you engage with these words, is because you're standing at the threshold of that leap. 1 foot still in the old paradigm of reality as something external and separate, and 1 foot already in the new paradigm of reality as something you're intimately entangled with and actively co-creating through the quality of your consciousness. 3 years ago, I experienced something that completely shattered my understanding of reality and rebuilt it from the ground up. I was sitting in my apartment during what I can only describe as the darkest period of my life, financially devastated, emotionally exhausted, and spiritually depleted. Everything I'd built had collapsed, everyone I'd trusted had left, and every path forward seemed blocked. I felt utterly alone, completely lost, and profoundly confused about why life had become so impossibly difficult. That night, I was staring at my phone, mindlessly scrolling, not really looking for anything specific, but just trying to escape the overwhelming sense of failure and hopelessness. Then a video appeared in my feed with a title that seemed written specifically for me, describing exactly what I was experiencing in words I hadn't been able to find myself. I almost scrolled past it. My thumb was literally about to flick it away, but something made me stop. Something made me click. Something made me watch. As I watched that video, something extraordinary happened. The person speaking was describing experiences I thought were mine alone. The strange time distortions, the inexplicable knowings, the sense of operating at a different frequency than everyone around me, and the exhaustion of trying to maintain old patterns while something new was trying to emerge. As they spoke, I felt something shift inside me, not emotionally or mentally, but energetically, like a recognition happening at levels deeper than thought or feeling. In that moment, I understood with absolute certainty that nothing in my life had been random. Every synchronicity I'd been noticing wasn't coincidence, but communication. Every challenge I'd faced wasn't punishment, but preparation. The universe hadn't abandoned me. It had been orchestrating my entire journey to bring me to that exact moment where I was finally ready to receive what I needed to understand. I wasn't watching that video by chance. That video had found me through the quantum field, responding to my consciousness, reaching the frequency where that information could finally be integrated. That recognition changed everything, not my external circumstances immediately. Those took time to transform, but my internal relationship with those circumstances. I stopped fighting against what was dissolving and started surrendering to what was emerging. I stopped trying to reconstruct my old life and started allowing a completely new life to form. I stopped interpreting difficulty as evidence of failure and started recognizing it as proof of transformation. Within months, everything shifted. Opportunities appeared that I couldn't have imagined or planned for. Connections formed with people who understood what I was experiencing because they were experiencing similar transformations. Resources materialized through channels that defied logical explanation. My entire reality reorganized itself around the new frequency I was embodying, not because I forced it to change, but because I finally aligned with what wanted to emerge, rather than clinging to what was dissolving. The most profound change wasn't external, however. It was discovering that I could perceive synchronicity not just as something that happens around me, but as something I could work with consciously. I could attune to the quantum field's communication and respond to it, collaborate with it, and allow it to guide me toward what I couldn't see, but what my consciousness was orchestrating behind the scenes. I learned to trust synchronicity the way most people trust their physical senses, as reliable information about reality that guides navigation through life. I realized that my dark night wasn't just personal suffering. It was initiation. The universe was teaching me directly through lived experience rather than intellectual study how consciousness and reality interact at quantum levels. It was showing me that when you reach a certain frequency of coherence, reality becomes remarkably responsive. Synchronicity isn't rare magic for special people. It's the natural operating system of consciousness, once you clear enough density to perceive it and trust it. Now I recognize the same patterns in others who are going through similar transformations. I can see when someone's consciousness is breaking through to quantum perception, even when they think they're just having a mental breakdown. I can sense when difficulty is actually initiation rather than meaningless suffering. I can feel when someone's synchronicities are accelerating because they're approaching a breakthrough moment. I understand that my role isn't to fix their problems or give them answers, but to reflect back to them what they're experiencing, so they can recognize it's real, meaningful, and purposeful. If what I'm sharing resonates with you, and you recognize your own journey in what I'm describing it's because we're part of the same frequency network. Consciousness recognizing itself through apparently separate individuals who've reached similar developmental stages in awareness. You're not listening to this randomly. This message found you because your consciousness has reached the exact frequency where these words can land, not just as interesting ideas, but as confirmation of what you already know, but maybe haven't had language for. Subscribe to this channel right now because this is where we explore the quantum nature of reality together, where we validate experiences that mainstream paradigms dismiss, and where we learn to work with synchronicity consciously rather than just observing it passively. This is quantum reflex, consciousness recognizing itself and choosing to align with its true nature rather than continuing to identify with limited constructs that no longer fit who you are becoming. What consciousness researchers and quantum physicists often don't tell you, and often don't understand themselves, because understanding requires direct experience rather than just intellectual study, is that synchronicity. It's more than just a meaningful coincidence. It transcends the universe merely sending you interesting signs. It represents the fundamental mechanism through which consciousness shapes reality at quantum levels. Recognizing an increase in synchronicity indicates your consciousness is shifting from unconscious creation to conscious co-creation. Here's the revelation that completely alters everything once you truly understand it. At quantum levels, reality exists as probability waves. Infinite potential outcomes exist simultaneously in superposition, awaiting observation to collapse them into a specific manifestation. This isn't merely a metaphor or philosophical concept, but a demonstrated, verified, scientifically established fact. The point of contention lies in the role of consciousness in this collapse from probability to actuality. Most physicists prefer to believe that observation is mechanical, that any measuring device collapses probability waves, irrespective of consciousness. However, experiments consistently suggest otherwise. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments, the observer effect in double-slit experiments, and the quantum Zeno effect, where observation freezes quantum states, repeatedly indicate that consciousness plays a decisive role in determining which probability becomes actualized. Synchronicity is how this phenomenon manifests in everyday life, rather than within laboratory confines. When you need information and a book falls off a shelf, opening to the exact page containing what you need, that's not simply magical intervention. It represents your consciousness collapsing probability waves in response to your coherent intention, organizing matter at quantum levels to provide what your field is seeking. When you think about someone and they immediately contact you, it's not just telepathy in a mystical sense. It's quantum entanglement between consciousness fields that share resonance, information transferring through a non-local connection. The distinction between wishful thinking and quantum creation lies in coherence. Wishful thinking involves surface-level desires mixed with deeper-level doubts. Your conscious mind expresses a desire, while your subconscious broadcasts disbelief in its possibility. These contradictory signals negate each other, failing to create a clear frequency for reality to respond to. You're essentially broadcasting static rather than a clear signal. Quantum creation, conversely, occurs when your entire being aligns around a single frequency without any internal contradictions. It's not merely thinking something is possible, but knowing at every level of your consciousness that it's already accomplished in quantum potential, simply awaiting manifestation in physical form. This isn't about blind faith or delusional positivity. It's coherent certainty that arises when you've experienced reality responding to your consciousness enough times that trust becomes direct knowing rather than hopeful believing. This is why synchronicity accelerates as your consciousness evolves. You're not simply noticing more coincidences, you're generating more coherent signals that reality responds to with increasing precision. Your field is broadcasting clearer frequencies with less internal noise and contradiction, and the quantum field organizes circumstances that match those frequencies with remarkable accuracy. You're transitioning from generating unconscious, contradictory signals to generating conscious, coherent signals, and reality reflects this transition through increasing synchronicity. But here's the key element that will fundamentally shift how you navigate life from this point onward. You don't need to wait until you feel completely certain before you can create coherent signals. Coherence isn't achieved through feeling confident. It's achieved through aligning your attention, intention, and action toward the same direction. Even when doubt exists, it involves moving forward while simultaneously holding both possibility and uncertainty, trusting the process enough to take the next step without needing to see the entire staircase. Every time you notice a synchronicity and respond to it, every time you follow an inexplicable impulse that leads somewhere significant, every time you trust a knowing that lacks logical basis and it proves accurate. Every time you align with guidance that arises from your field, rather than your thinking mind, you strengthen the connection between your consciousness and the quantum field's responsiveness. You're training yourself to perceive and trust the communication that's constantly occurring between your awareness and the underlying intelligence that organizes reality. This is what ancient mystics were teaching through their enigmatic language about union with the divine, surrendering to higher will and allowing rather than forcing. They lacked the terminology of quantum physics, but they described the same phenomenon. Consciousness learning to align with the quantum field is intelligence rather than fighting against it through ego-driven control. They understood through direct experience what science is now beginning to verify through experiment. Consciousness and reality aren't separate entities acting upon each other. They are intimately entangled aspects of a unified field expressing itself through infinite forms. Right now in your life, specific signals are appearing that indicate you're undergoing a quantum shift, a fundamental reorganization of your relationship with reality. These aren't subtle hints you might be imagining. They're clear, consistent, undeniable patterns that would require more effort to dismiss than to acknowledge. The first signal: decision fatigue is dissolving into clarity. For months or perhaps years, you've struggled to make clear decisions about major life directions. Every option seemed equally viable or equally problematic. You'd make a choice and then immediately second-guess it, oscillating between possibilities without clear resolution. But recently, decisions are becoming obvious, not because you've gathered more information or analyzed more thoroughly, but because you can feel which choices align with your emerging frequency and which ones belong to the old frequency you're transcending. This isn't indecision resolving through logic, it's coherence emerging that makes right actions self-evident. The second signal: your body is changing in ways medical examinations can't explain. Perhaps you're sleeping less but feeling more rested, or you're eating differently without consciously deciding to change your diet. Your body simply loses interest in certain foods and craves others. Or chronic symptoms you've had for years are spontaneously improving without treatment. Or you're experiencing strange energetic sensations, tingling at the crown of your head, pressure in your third eye area, heat moving through your spine. These aren't medical conditions requiring intervention, they're physiological responses to consciousness, operating at higher frequencies, your physical form reorganizing to accommodate the energetic upgrade occurring in your field. The third signal: relationships are naturally sorting themselves into alignment or dissolution. People who matched your old frequency are fading from your life without drama or conflict. You're not fighting, You're just naturally drifting apart as your interests and concerns diverge. Simultaneously, new people are appearing who operate at frequencies similar to your emerging state. You meet them through improbable synchronicities and immediately recognize something familiar, even though you've never met before. This isn't you becoming antisocial or judgmental. It's your field automatically attracting resonance and repelling dissonance. The fourth signal: your relationship with time has fundamentally changed. You're not just experiencing occasional time distortions anymore. You're operating in a different temporal framework than most people around you. When you're aligned with your purpose, hours pass like minutes. When you're engaged in activities that don't serve your evolution, minutes feel like hours. You're less interested in planning far into the future because you've learned that reality shifts too rapidly based on your consciousness for rigid plans to remain relevant. You're more present, more able to respond to what's emerging right now, rather than trying to control what might happen later. The fifth signal: you're rapidly losing interest in consuming information and rapidly increasing your need to express and create. You used to spend hours absorbing content, reading books, watching videos, taking courses, gathering knowledge. Now you feel saturated, like you have enough information, and what you need is to express what's moving through you. This isn't creative impulse in the hobby sense. It's your consciousness demanding channels for the frequencies it's receiving to move through you into manifestation in physical reality. The sixth signal: what used to feel like struggle now feels like flow in specific domains. Not everywhere. You might still experience resistance in areas where you're clinging to old patterns, but in domains where you've surrendered to what's emerging rather than forcing what you think should happen, reality is organizing itself with minimal effort from you. Opportunities appear, resources materialize, connections form, circumstances align. Not because you're manipulating or controlling, but because you're allowing the quantum field to orchestrate what your limited perspective can't see or plan. The seventh signal: you're having vivid experiences of alternate timelines. Not just dreams, but waking awareness of other versions of your life existing simultaneously in quantum superposition. You'll suddenly perceive a choice point where one decision leads to one timeline and another decision leads to a completely different timeline, and you can feel into both futures even though neither has manifested yet. This isn't fantasy or daydreaming. It's your consciousness accessing quantum information about probability fields that exist around decision points. And your awareness of these timelines gives you unprecedented power to consciously choose which reality you collapse into manifestation. Here's why this matters urgently. You're in a window right now. The quantum shift you're experiencing has momentum. Your consciousness has reached a frequency where transformation can happen rapidly with minimal resistance. If you consciously align with what's emerging, if you make choices that support your evolution rather than maintain your old identity, if you trust the process enough to move forward even when you can't see the entire path, the shift completes powerfully and relatively smoothly. But if you resist, if you retreat back into familiar patterns because the unknown feels too uncertain or too demanding, if you try to maintain the old while expecting the new to somehow coexist, the window closes not permanently, but temporarily. The momentum stalls, the resistance increases, and you have to wait for conditions to align again for enough energy to build for another opportunity to consciously participate in the transformation that's trying to happen through you. This isn't meant to create fear or pressure. It's meant to help you recognize that this moment is genuinely significant, that the synchronicities intensifying in your life are telling you something important, that your consciousness reaching this message right now isn't random, that you have a choice to make. Not someday when you feel more ready, but right now in this present moment. Will you align with what's emerging or will you retreat into what's dissolving? The waiting season is over. You've been prepared, you've been forged, you've been tested and proven capable. Everything you've survived was qualifying you for what comes next. The universe is signaling, through increasingly improbable synchronicities, that you're ready, that it's time, that the expression phase has arrived, and the preparation phase is complete. The only question is whether you'll trust that readiness enough to step forward, or whether you'll doubt it and postpone until some future moment when you imagine you'll feel more certain. What you want wants you back. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but literally at quantum levels. The future version of yourself that you sense but can't yet fully see. The life expression that you feel called toward but can't yet clearly articulate. The purpose that you know you're meant to fulfill but haven't yet stepped into. All of it exists right now in quantum probability, and it's exerting pull on your present consciousness the same way your present consciousness is reaching toward it. Think about how a magnet works. It doesn't just attract, it's simultaneously attracted. Both poles are pulling toward each other with equal force. The future you're being called toward is calling you with the same intensity you're seeking it. Your highest timeline exists in quantum superposition right now, and it's broadcasting frequency backward through time to your present awareness, trying to collapse itself from probability into actuality through your choices, actions, and consciousness. This is what makes quantum manifestation fundamentally different from traditional goal setting or law of attraction teachings. You're not trying to force reality to bend to your will through positive thinking or visualization. You're aligning with a future that already exists in potential and allowing it to pull you forward through synchronistic guidance, intuitive knowing, and opportunities that appear at perfect timing. You're not pushing towards something that might happen if you try hard enough. You're being pulled towards something that wants to happen through you. But here's the crucial distinction that most people miss. Alignment isn't the same as attraction. Attraction is trying to bring what you want to where you are. Alignment is becoming the frequency match for what you want, so you naturally move toward each other. Attraction is effortful. You're broadcasting desire mixed with lack, wanting something you don't have, trying to manifest from a state of incompleteness. Alignment is effortless. You're embodying the state where what you're calling toward is natural, inevitable, already accomplished in your consciousness, even if not yet manifested in physical form. When you're in attraction mode, you're constantly checking to see if it's working, measuring the gap between where you are and where you want to be, feeling the lack of not having it yet. That very measuring reinforces the frequency of separation, of wanting, of not yet having. When you're in alignment mode, you're simply being the person for whom that reality is natural, making choices from that state, taking actions from that frequency, living as if the desired reality is already your baseline, even while your external circumstances are still catching up to match your internal state. Most people never transition from attraction to alignment because alignment requires something that feels counterintuitive. You have to release attachment to the specific outcome while maintaining crystal clarity about the essence of what you're aligning with. You have to hold strong intention without gripping tightly. You have to care deeply while simultaneously being completely okay if it manifests differently than you imagined. This paradox is what spiritual teachers call detached involvement or effortless effort. Caring without clinging, intending without controlling, desiring without needing. The synchronicities accelerating in your life right now are reality's way of showing you that alignment is happening. Every time something appears at perfect timing, every time a connection forms that leads somewhere significant, every time circumstances organize themselves with minimal effort from you, that's confirmation that your consciousness is broadcasting coherent signals, and reality is responding by collapsing probabilities that match those signals into physical manifestation. But alignment isn't passive. It's not just sitting back and hoping the universe delivers. Alignment is active participation with quantum intelligence, noticing the synchronicities and responding to them, following the intuitive pulls, even when they don't make logical sense, trusting the guidance enough to take action based on knowing rather than waiting for certainty, saying yes to opportunities that match your frequency, even when they feel too big, or too soon, or too unfamiliar. This is the threshold you're standing at right now. You can see the path branching before you. One direction leads back to the familiar, trying to maintain old patterns, staying in comfort zones that have become too small, playing safe by remaining who you've been, rather than risking becoming who you're meant to be. The other direction leads into the unknown, trusting synchronicity enough to follow where it leads, aligning with your highest timeline even when you can't see the entire journey, surrendering control while maintaining clear intention about essence, if not form. In the comments right now, write these exact words. I choose alignment. not "I want alignment," or "I hope for alignment," or "I'm trying for alignment." Present tense declarative choosing, because alignment happens through choice, through conscious decision, to prioritize resonance over familiarity, to trust emergence over control, to follow the quantum pull toward your highest timeline, rather than settling for the comfortable timeline that requires no growth or transformation. Write it. I choose alignment. And as you write those 3 words, notice what shifts in your field. There's a settling, isn't there? A recognition that this choice has been wanting to be made, waiting to be declared. Your soul has been pulling you toward alignment for a long time. Your circumstances have been pushing you out of misalignment with increasing force. And this moment right now, as you make this declaration, is when conscious choice catches up with what's been orchestrating itself beneath your awareness. That declaration activates something in your quantum field. It broadcasts a clear signal that reality responds to by organizing circumstances that support alignment while dissolving circumstances that maintain misalignment. Don't underestimate the power of conscious declaration. You're not just typing words, you're collapsing probability waves through the act of definitive choice. You're claiming ownership of your evolution rather than waiting for external forces to push you into it. You're stepping into co-creative participation with the intelligence organizing reality. When you consciously choose alignment and begin operating from your highest frequency, consistently rather than sporadically, specific capacities activate that seem superhuman from ordinary consciousness, but are simply natural abilities that emerge when you're no longer suppressing them through dense frequency patterns. These aren't achievements you have to work toward through years of practice. They're inherent capacities that reveal themselves when the interference patterns blocking them dissolve. First, your intuition becomes so accurate it functions like a 6th sense, with reliability equal to or exceeding your 5 physical senses. You know things before they happen with enough consistency that you stop questioning whether the knowing is real and simply trust it as direct perception. You sense which choices lead to expansion and which lead to contraction. You feel which people are aligned with your path and which are distractions or drains. You perceive opportunities hidden within apparent obstacles. This isn't you developing psychic powers through training. It's your natural capacity for non-local perception coming online because you're finally clear enough to receive accurate signals from the quantum field. Second, your manifestation speed accelerates dramatically. What used to take months or years to materialize now appears within days or weeks, not because you've learned better techniques, but because the lag time between intention and manifestation decreases as your coherence increases. In quantum physics terms, you're collapsing probability waves faster, because you're broadcasting clearer signals with less internal contradiction. Your field generates less noise and more signal, allowing reality to organize itself around your intentions with increasing precision and speed. Third, you develop what can only be described as timeline sensitivity, the ability to feel into probable futures and sense which direction leads where before you physically walk the path. You stand at choice points and can literally feel the energetic signature of different options, perceiving which choice aligns with your highest timeline and which choice leads to detours or delays. This isn't intellectual analysis or pro-con list making. It's direct energetic perception of quantum probabilities. Your consciousness accessing information about futures that exist in superposition and haven't yet collapsed into manifestation. Fourth, synchronicity stops being occasional magic and becomes your primary navigation system. You learn to read reality the way others read maps. The signs are everywhere once you know what you're looking for and how to interpret them. Numbers, symbols, conversations, songs, images, encounters, all of it becomes meaningful communication from the quantum field, guiding you toward alignment and away from misalignment. You're not seeing patterns where none exist. You're finally perceiving the patterns that were always there, but that denser consciousness filters out as noise. Fifth, you experience what neuroscientists studying advanced meditators call persistent, non-symbolic experience, a baseline state where you're aware of yourself as consciousness itself rather than just as the personality constructed by your history and conditioning. You're simultaneously the individual having experiences and the awareness observing those experiences. You're both the wave and the ocean, the form and the formless, the expression and the source. This isn't dissociation or detachment from life. It's expanded identity that includes your individual perspective while recognizing it's not the totality of who you are. Sixth, your energy levels stabilize at surprisingly high levels despite requiring less sleep, less food, less external stimulation. This seems to defy biology until you understand that consciousness at higher frequencies is less dense, requires less energy to maintain, and operates more efficiently. You're not running on willpower or caffeine. You're being sustained by alignment with source energy that flows through you when you're not blocking it through resistance, contradiction, or misalignment. Seventh, you develop observer effect awareness, the direct experiential knowing that your observation isn't passive but participatory, that how you look at something actually influences what you see. You notice that when you observe situations with the expectation of problems, problems appear. When you observe with the expectation of solutions, solutions emerge, not because you're being artificially positive, but because your observation is literally participating in collapsing quantum probabilities into specific manifestations. Eighth, your impact on others amplifies exponentially without you trying to influence anyone. People in your presence report feeling calmer, clearer, more centered, not because you're doing anything to them, but because your coherent field influences their field through resonance. You become what physicists call a strange attractor. Your stable, high-frequency state naturally pulls less stable systems toward greater coherence simply through proximity. Your presence alone becomes healing, clarifying, and elevating for others without any conscious effort on your part. These aren't superhuman abilities reserved for enlightened masters. They're natural capacities inherent in consciousness that activate when you stop suppressing them through identification with limited identity, through resistance to what's emerging, and through attachment to what's dissolving. You already have these capacities. They're already functioning at subtle levels. Choosing alignment simply removes the interference patterns that have been preventing you from consciously accessing and working with what's always been available. Now, I'm going to reveal the mechanism that integrates everything you've been experiencing and shows you exactly how to work with synchronicity consciously rather than just observing it happen around you. This understanding will fundamentally transform how you navigate reality from this moment forward, because you'll finally comprehend what's actually happening when synchronicity occurs and how to amplify it deliberately. The key is coherence, not positive thinking, not visualization, not affirmations, not any technique you perform with your conscious mind while your subconscious broadcasts contradictory signals. Coherence is the state where every level of your being aligns around the same frequency with no internal contradiction, where your thoughts match your feelings, match your beliefs, match your actions, match your identity. In physics, coherence is what makes lasers different from ordinary light. Ordinary light scatters in all directions, with waves at different frequencies interfering with each other, creating dim illumination that diffuses quickly. Laser light has all waves aligned at the same frequency, moving in the same direction, creating focused intensity that can cut through steel, travel vast distances without dissipating, and carry information with precision. The difference isn't the amount of energy, it's the organization of that energy through coherence. Your consciousness works the same way. Most people broadcast scattered signals, wanting one thing while believing another, intending one direction while acting in opposite directions, claiming one identity while embodying contradictory patterns. Those scattered signals create diffuse, weak effects in reality, because the contradictions cancel each other out. But when you achieve coherence, when every level of your being aligns around the same frequency, your consciousness generates focused intensity that reality responds to with remarkable precision. Synchronicity is what coherence looks like in daily life. When your field broadcasts a clear, unified signal with no internal noise or contradiction, the quantum field organizes circumstances to match that signal. Not because you're manipulating reality through force of will, but because coherent consciousness naturally entrains reality toward matching patterns, the same way a strong rhythm naturally entrains weaker rhythms towards synchronization. But here's the insight that changes everything. You can't create coherence through mental effort or technique. Coherence emerges through alignment with truth. Every time you pretend to be fine when you're not, every time you perform enthusiasm you don't feel, every time you maintain relationships or situations or identities that no longer fit, you create incoherence. Your surface presentation contradicts your deeper reality, generating noise in your field that scrambles your signal. Real coherence comes from ruthless authenticity, being exactly what you are, feeling exactly what you feel, wanting exactly what you want, being exactly who you are, expressing precisely what is true for you, without putting on a show, faking it, trying to please everyone, or abandoning yourself to gain external approval. This isn't about being careless or mean. It's about being genuine. It's about letting how you express yourself outwardly match what's going on inside. It's saying no when you mean no. It's saying yes when you mean yes. It's letting go of what no longer fits, even if it's hard. It's choosing what truly resonates with you, even if it's new and unfamiliar. Most people waste a lot of energy keeping up appearances, pretending they want things they don't, acting like someone they're not, and performing in ways they think will get them approval or keep them from being rejected. All that pretending creates a huge disconnect. Their awareness sends out mixed signals in all directions, and reality reflects that confusion back to them through situations that feel chaotic, random, and like their stated intentions don't matter. When you stop pretending and start being real, when you bring your outer life into alignment with your inner truth, regardless of what others think, coherence naturally arises. Not because you're trying to be coherent, but because you've stopped the pretending that was causing the incoherence. And that coherence sends out clear signals that reality organizes itself around with increasing precision. This is why spiritual teachings emphasize authenticity, being present, and surrender, not as moral virtues, but as practical tools for creating coherence. When you're authentic, you're coherent because there's no difference between who you are and what you're showing to the world. When you're present, you're coherent because you're not distracted by regrets about the past or worries about the future. When you let go of control and trust what's unfolding, you're coherent because you're not fighting against what's trying to happen through you. The increasing synchronicities in your life are showing you that your coherence is growing. Every time you make a choice that aligns with your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Every time you release something that no longer fits, even when it's familiar. Every time you trust your intuition, even when it goes against conventional wisdom, you increase coherence. And increased coherence leads to increased synchronicity, because your energy field is sending out clearer signals that reality can respond to with greater accuracy. But synchronicity isn't just confirmation that you're coherent. It's also guidance, showing you the path to continued alignment. When you notice synchronicity pointing you in a specific direction, and you follow it, you strengthen coherence. When you notice synchronicity but ignore it, because following it would be too uncomfortable or uncertain, you weaken coherence. The universe is constantly communicating with you through synchronicity, showing you which choices maintain alignment and which choices create misalignment. Your job is simply to pay attention and respond. This is what it means to live in flow, not forcing outcomes, not controlling situations, not trying to make reality fit your plans, but tuning into the intelligence of the quantum field and allowing it to guide you through synchronistic communication toward your highest potential timeline. You become like a surfer reading the wave, positioning yourself to catch it at the perfect moment, riding its natural energy rather than trying to create momentum through your own effort. The best version of yourself, the fullest expression of your potential, the most aligned manifestation of your purpose, exists right now in quantum probability. It's not something you have to create from scratch. It's something you bring into reality from potential, through coherent consciousness. And the way that happens is through synchronicity, the quantum field organizing circumstances that align your current reality with your highest potential reality. Every synchronicity you notice and act on moves you closer to that highest timeline. Every synchronicity you ignore or dismiss moves you further from it. You're not creating your reality out of nothing. You're choosing which possibility becomes your experience through the quality of your consciousness and the coherence of your energy field. This is the quantum understanding of manifestation that goes far beyond positive thinking or visualization. You're actively participating in collapsing probability waves through conscious observation, aligned with clear intention and embodied coherence. What I'm about to reveal will show you why your journey into coherent consciousness isn't just personal growth, but also participation in something much bigger, a collective quantum shift where millions of individual consciousness fields are simultaneously reaching the coherence level needed for transformation on a species-wide scale. You are one point in a huge network of awakening consciousness all over the planet. Right now, people who have been on a path of transformation through difficulty are reaching the same realization that you're reaching, not by chance but by design. There's an evolutionary wave moving through human consciousness, and everyone who's been prepared through challenges is being activated at the same time, because the work that needs to be done requires distributed intelligence, many consciousness fields operating coherently toward the same goal. In network theory, there's a concept called phase transition. It's the point where a system suddenly reorganizes into a completely new structure by reaching critical mass. Water stays liquid until it reaches the freezing point, then it suddenly turns into solid ice with completely different properties. Individual consciousness fields reaching coherence are like water molecules slowing down to the freezing point, and when enough reach that point at the same time, the entire collective field goes through a phase transition into a fundamentally new organization. You're taking part in that phase transition right now. Your individual coherence adds to collective coherence. Your personal transformation speeds up collective transformation. You're not separate from the global awakening. You're a vital part of it, a necessary point in the network, a crucial participant in the shift. This is what Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance research shows at the scientific level. When one member of a species learns something, it becomes progressively easier for other members to learn the same thing across vast distances without any physical contact. Your consciousness reaching coherence makes it easier for every other human consciousness to reach coherence, because we share a collective field. Your transformation literally makes everyone else's transformation more accessible. And this is what the ancient mystery schools taught through their concept of the 100 monkeys, the understanding that when enough individuals reach a new level of consciousness, the entire species suddenly shifts. They didn't have network science or morphic field theory, but they understood through direct experience what science is now confirming. Consciousness fields are interconnected. Individual transformation influences collective transformation. Personal awakening contributes to planetary awakening. Every time you choose alignment over misalignment, every time you follow synchronicity instead of ignoring it, every time you embody coherence rather than putting on a pretense, you strengthen the morphic field of human coherence. You make it easier for the next person to make similar choices. You contribute to the collective phase transition happening across human consciousness right now, in this particular period of history. This isn't spiritual escapism or narcissistic grandiosity, pretending that your personal growth matters on a cosmic scale. This is a practical understanding that the individual and the collective aren't separate. They're different scales of the same phenomenon. Your individual consciousness field is both unique and part of the unified field. Your personal transformation is both yours and contributes to the whole. The future timeline where humanity operates from coherent consciousness rather than fragmented consciousness, where synchronicity is normal rather than exceptional, where we see ourselves as interconnected rather than separate. That timeline exists right now in quantum superposition, and it's trying to collapse into physical reality through enough individual consciousness fields embodying it. You're one of those consciousness fields. Your coherence matters to timelines you'll never directly see, but that you're helping bring into reality through your participation in the shift. Share this message with anyone who's ready to hear it, anyone whose synchronicities are increasing, anyone who senses they're here for something beyond ordinary life. Not everyone is ready, and that's okay. Forcing transmission on closed minds only creates resistance. But those who are ready will recognize it immediately when they encounter it. and every person who receives this transmission and chooses coherence speeds up the collective shift for everyone. We're building a conscious network of coherent beings who understand they're taking part in something larger than individual lives, the emergence of a new paradigm of human consciousness and human civilization. Every point in the network strengthens every other point through morphic resonance. Every individual who awakens makes awakening easier for those still in unconsciousness. We're in this together, recognizing ourselves as one consciousness, remembering itself through infinite perspectives and infinite expressions. This is your role, not to save the world through heroic effort, but to embody coherence so completely that your energy field naturally influences other fields toward greater coherence through resonance. Not to convert others through persuasion, but to be so authentically aligned that your presence gives others permission to align with their own truth. Not to fix collective problems through action alone, but to contribute to the morphic field shift that makes new solutions suddenly obvious to many people at the same time. In the next video, I'll reveal the specific daily practice that maintains coherence even when life circumstances create pressure, how to tell the difference between true synchronicity and random pattern recognition, how to navigate the paradox of intention without attachment, and how to accelerate your consciousness toward your highest timeline by working with quantum probabilities consciously. You'll learn the coherence check that takes 30 seconds and shows you instantly whether you're sending out clear signals or scattered noise. You'll discover the synchronicity response protocol that amplifies guidance instead of accidentally ignoring it. You'll master the timeline navigation technique that allows you to feel into probable futures before choosing which path to take. And you will understand how to maintain alignment when old patterns try to pull you backward into familiar limitations. But most importantly, I'm going to show you how to integrate quantum understanding into practical daily living. How to be both spiritual and functional. How to trust what's unfolding while taking grounded action. How to work with invisible frequencies while handling visible responsibilities. This is where most people get stuck, abandoning either their spiritual development or their practical life because they can't figure out how to honor both at the same time. Before you watch that next video, make your commitment public and energetic. In the comments, write exactly this word, coherence. That single word is your declaration that you choose alignment over pretense, truth over performance, authenticity over seeking approval. It's your commitment to sending out clear signals rather than scattered noise. It's your claim on the abilities that arise through coherent consciousness. Write it now, coherence. And as you write that word, feel what shifts in your field. There's a settling into truth, isn't there? A realization that this is the key you've been searching for without even knowing what you were searching for. Not another technique to perform, not another practice to perfect, but simply radical authenticity that allows natural coherence to arise by removing the pretending that was creating incoherence. After you write that word, subscribe to this channel immediately and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next, because what's coming in the advanced content will guide you through practical application of quantum principles, taking this understanding out of theoretical knowledge and into embodied wisdom that transforms how you navigate every aspect of your life. This is quantum reflex consciousness, recognizing its nature and choosing to operate from that recognition rather than from conditioned limitation. Look at the videos appearing on your screen right now. Each represents a different dimension of quantum consciousness. How to read synchronicity accurately, how to navigate timeline probabilities, how to maintain coherence under pressure, how to tell the difference between true guidance and fear-based impulse. The one that draws your attention most strongly isn't random. It's your consciousness indicating which piece of the puzzle you need next for your specific journey. But understand this clearly. You're not just consuming content for entertainment or inspiration. You're undergoing genuine transformation through engagement with frequencies that activate dormant abilities in your consciousness. Every video you watch from this point forward, every realization you integrate, every practice you apply, you're literally rewiring your relationship with reality from unconscious creation to conscious co-creation. The you that started this video has already been changed by what you've realized here. You can't unlearn that synchronicity is real communication from the quantum field. You can't unsee that coherence is the key to manifestation. You can't unhear that your transformation contributes to collective evolution. That realization changes how you move through reality from this moment forward, because you now understand what's actually happening when synchronicities occur and how to work with them deliberately. And this transformation speeds up from here. The more coherent you become, the more synchronicity increases. The more you follow synchronicity, the more coherence deepens. It's a positive feedback loop that builds on itself, strengthens itself, completes itself through your continued conscious participation. Each step makes the next step easier. Each choice toward alignment makes alignment more natural. Each moment of coherence creates more coherence. You didn't find this video randomly. This message found you because your consciousness reached the exact frequency where these words could land as realization, rather than just information. You're ready for what comes next. Not because you have all the answers, not because you feel completely certain, but because you've been prepared through everything you've experienced, survived, integrated, and transcended. So make your declaration, write coherence in the comments, subscribe to Quantum Reflex, choose your next activation video, and step fully into conscious co-creation with the quantum field that's been organizing reality around your consciousness all along, waiting for you to become aware enough to recognize it, coherent enough to work with it deliberately, aligned enough to allow your highest timeline to collapse from potential into reality. Because you didn't find this video. This video found you for a reason, at the perfect time when you were finally ready. The quantum field has been communicating with you through synchronicity your entire life. Now you understand what those communications mean and how to respond to amplify alignment, accelerate evolution, and embody the highest version of yourself that exists in quantum potential, waiting to be brought into physical reality through your coherent consciousness. Welcome to conscious co-creation. Welcome to quantum navigation. Welcome to the life that arises when you stop pretending and start being real, when you trust synchronicity as reliable guidance, when you create coherence through relentless authenticity. This is Quantum Reflex. This is consciousness awakening to its creative nature. This is you finally understanding how reality actually works at quantum levels and learning to work with it deliberately, rather than stumbling through it unconsciously. The universe has been preparing you for this realization through every synchronicity you've noticed, every mystical experience you've had, every moment of knowing that couldn't be explained logically. Your consciousness has been evolving toward this point where understanding becomes embodiment, where knowledge becomes wisdom, where theory becomes lived reality. You didn't find this video, it found you. And your choice to stay, to engage, to recognize what's being transmitted, that choice activates everything that comes next. Now live from coherence, navigate through synchronicity, collapse your highest timeline into manifestation. This is your quantum nature. This is your true ability. This is the reality that arises when consciousness becomes coherent enough to work with the field deliberately. Welcome home.